Okay, in number 24, we're looking at 2 minus tangent squared x equals secant squared x plus 4 secant of x plus 5. And we have a Pythagorean identity that will let us change this equation into all one trig function. So if we look at our trig hexagon, tangent is sine divided by cosine. Then we have cotangent, reciprocal of sine is cosecant, reciprocal of cosine is secant, and the one in the middle. And the Pythagorean identity that we're going to use is this one, that tangent squared x plus 1 equals secant squared x. So tangent squared plus 1 equals secant squared x. So if we were to subtract 1 to the other side to get tangent squared x by itself, it would be equal to secant squared x minus 1, and that's what we're going to substitute into the equation in place of tangent squared x. So when we do that, we'll have 2 minus, and then we'll use our Pythagorean identity, secant squared x minus 1, and that's equal to the other side of the equation, secant squared x plus 4 secant of x plus 5. Okay, next we'll distribute that negative to get rid of the parentheses, and we'll have 2 minus secant squared x. A negative and a negative is a positive 1, and that equals the other side. And since we've got all one trig function and it's quadratic, we'll set this equal to 0 and see if we can factor or use the quadratic formula. So we're going to add the secant squared to the other side. So we'll have 2 of those, 2 secant squared x. Then 2 plus 1 is 3, and we'll subtract that from both sides. So we'll have a 4 secant of x, and then 5 minus 3 is 2. And then we can see that all 3 of these terms have a 2 we can factor out. So we'll have secant squared x plus 2 secant x plus 1. So we're looking for factors of 1 that add to equal 2, which are 1 and 1. So that's a perfect square trinomial. That'll factor as secant of x plus 1 quantity squared. So we'll set that factor equal to 0, and that means secant of x is equal to negative 1. And the reciprocal of secant is cosine. So cosine is also negative 1, because the reciprocal of negative 1 is negative 1. And then to get x by itself, we take the inverse. So we're looking for the arc cosine of negative 1. That's asking for the angle in the unit circle that has an x-coordinate, the cosine is the x-coordinate, of negative 1. And there's only one angle that meets that criteria, and that's pi. So we're going to check in the calculator by storing pi as our x value, and then we'll type in our original equation, 2 minus tangent of x squared, and our equal sign. And secant, there's no button, but we know that secant is the reciprocal of the cosine. So we'll enter 1 divided by the cosine of x squared plus 4 divided by the cosine of x, and then plus 5. And we'll press, whoops, not, we had one graph, we wanted enter. We press enter, and we get a 1. So we know that x equals pi checks.